This conference will now be recorded.
No, it is not visible. Yeah, now it is visible.
Yeah. So good morning. I'm Pujita. So I have 3 years experience as a full stack developer. I'm good with programming languages like Java, Python, C and C++. And coming to the backend framework, I'm good with Spring Boot and databases. I have experience with SQL and NoSQL databases as well. And in front end, I have experience with Angular framework, also HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So today, let's going to start about Java. So this session is like an introductory session, like core Java refresher, where I would explain all the OOPS concepts and about Java. So a session about basic Java and the object-oriented programming concepts. So basically, before learning Java, there should be a question, right? Why someone needs to learn Java, why it is preferable over other languages. So, first we will see what are the main uses of Java and now why, how much popularity it has right now in corporate world. So, in the world, like 80% of the companies, they are preferring Java over other languages because it can be used not only for mobile applications like web applications, maybe desktop applications, maybe games, maybe in several aspects it's being used. And and apart from that, it has some advantages which other programming languages might not offer. I think you can see my OneNote screen as well. So first and foremost important thing is that it can be it has a term called write once and run anywhere. So that means it is platform independent. So for example, if I write a program in my system that is Windows, so that you can even run it on a Mac platform or Linux anywhere. So it is platform independent. Also, like in the current job market, it has like lot of demand and it is open source and free. Okay. And so it offers this object oriented programming language. So what is this object oriented programming language and what are its features? We will learn about them. So before going to that, we need to know like how or what is a programming language. So how useful or why do we need to learn any programming language? See, programming language makes any task, whatever we are doing manually, it will do the task easily in fraction of seconds. For example, if I want to calculate the average of marks of all the students, for example, 10 students, for me it take at least 5 to 10 minutes, even if I do as fast as I can. So if, for example, on the same, like on the other hand, if I just write a instruction like 10 line instructions and I execute a program to calculate the average of all the students, it won't even take a second. It will just execute it in fraction of seconds. So in that way, it helps us automate all the things whatever we are doing manually. That can be done in fraction of seconds just by giving like some instructions. So those instructions can be given in certain language that can be understood by the computer. So how Java like actually works, let me explain you. Before that, we need to know about the terms compilation and interpretation. So what they are. So compilation and interpretation, like both we use them interchangeably. Like Python is an interpreted language, Java is both compiled and interpreted language. What are they? So what happens is whatever the programming language we are learning is a high level programming language. All the programming languages that can be C, Python, like all of them, we call that as high level programming language. So how system will understand this high level programming language, like I write the program in Java, you may write it in Python. So how it understood? Can it understand all the languages we write? No, actually there is a middleman, or you can say there is a translator. See, for example, whenever you visit another country where you don't know what they speak, then you might use the translator, right? You might use a translator to convert your language to their language, like that. So just like that, there is a translator in between this high level programming language and the language understood by computer. So what is the language understood by the computer? It's nothing but machine level language or binary code, zeros and ones. So what this compiler or interpreter will do with Java? For example, if I write my Java file, so every Java file is dot saved with dot Java. So for example, if I write a file called abc.java, so when I execute it, so after writing the instructions, we will just execute it, right? So when I execute it, this will be compiled by the compiler. So compile means trans. This works as a translator, and this converts that file abc.class. So a new class file will be generated, which has the byte code. This is not the end. So this is the compilation phase. This phase is compilation phase. Okay. So once that dot class file is generated, it is loaded by the class loader. Then what happens? Then interpretation happens. So this abc dot class will be interpreted by JVM. Java Virtual Machine is responsible for this interpretation. This we also call it as runtime. Okay. So like while executing the programs, you might hear the term like runtime, compile time. So compilation is the phase which happens first, and later interpretation happens by the JVM. JVM is responsible for it. Now this abc.class file is generated, and it is converted to binary code, which is nothing but zeros and ones, machine level language or low level language, which is understood by the computer. So this is a process that happens when you write some instructions in Java, and when you execute the file, this is what going to happen. Okay. So now let's see what are object oriented concepts, or what is an object or what is a class. So what is object oriented programming? Let me show you something. See. So all the programming revolves around this objects and classes. So what are these objects? So why it is so popular means, it is very very near to the real world. So all the things you do in object oriented programming are very much familiar, or like very much nearer to the real world environment. సో మనం రోజు ఏది లైక్ మనం రోజు చేసే పనులు, మనం చేసే ప్రోగ్రామింగ్. సో లైక్ ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ రియల్ వరల్డ్ అంటే లెట్స్ సే ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ ఏ పెన్, కార్ రియల్గా ఎగ్జిస్ట్ అవుతున్న ఆబ్జెక్ట్స్కి చాలా దగ్గరగా ఉంటుంది ఈ ఆబ్జెక్ట్ ఓరియంటెడ్ ప్రోగ్రామింగ్. అండ్ వీ కెన్ రిలేట్ ఎవ్రీ ప్రోగ్రామ్, మీరు రాసే ప్రతి ప్రోగ్రామ్ మీరు ఈ రియల్ వరల్డ్తో లైక్ ఈ ఇన్హెరిటెన్స్ కావచ్చు, పాలిమార్ఫిజం కావచ్చు, ప్రతిదీ యూ క్యాన్ లైక్ రిలేట్ ఇట్ టు ద రియల్ వరల్డ్. సో రియల్ వరల్డ్‌లో ఈ సినారియో ఎక్కడ జరుగుతుందంటే మీకు మీకు ఈజీగా నీకు అర్థమవుతుంది. ఓకే. ఇన్హెరిటెన్స్ అంటే లైక్ ఇన్హెరిటెన్స్ మనం వినే ఉంటాం. ఇన్హెరిటెన్స్ అంటే ప్రాపర్టీ ఇన్హెరిట్ చేసుకోవడం. సో జస్ట్ లైక్ దట్ ఒక క్లాస్ ఇంకో క్లాస్ ప్రాపర్టీస్ ఇన్హెరిట్ చేసుకోలేదు. పాలిమార్ఫిజం అంటే ఒకటి 2 ఆర్ 3 ఫార్మ్స్‌లో ఎగ్జిస్ట్ అవ్వడం. విచ్ ఐ విల్ ఎక్స్‌ప్లెయిన్ ఇన్ డీటెయిల్. ఐ యామ్ జస్ట్ గివింగ్ యూ లైక్ హెడ్స్ అప్. సో అబ్స్ట్రాక్షన్ అంటే ఓన్లీ అవసరమైన డీటెయిల్స్, ఓన్లీ లైక్ నెసెసరీ డీటెయిల్స్‌ని మనం we will show them. All the important details are hidden. ఇంప్లిమెంటేషన్ డీటెయిల్స్, ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ మీరు కార్ రైడ్ చేస్తున్నారు. సో మీరు స్టీరింగ్ యూస్ చేస్తారు, బట్ యూ డోంట్ నో హౌ ఇట్ వర్క్స్ ఇంటర్నల్లీ, రైట్? లోపల ఏం జరుగుతుందో వీ కాన్ సీ హౌ ద లాజిక్ ఈజ్ ఇంప్లిమెంటెడ్. ఆర్ ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ మీరు ఏటీఎం విజిట్ చేశారు. ఏటీఎం విజిట్ చేసినప్పుడు మీరు విత్డ్రా క్లిక్ చేస్తారు, ఆర్ లైక్ లెట్స్ సే డిపాజిట్ క్లిక్ చేస్తారు. ఇట్ వర్క్స్, బట్ మీకు తెలుస్తుందా లోపల ఏం లాజిక్ రాశారు, ఆర్ వాట్ హ్యాపెన్స్ ఇంటర్నల్లీ? యూ కాన్ సీ, రైట్? దట్ ఈస్ నథింగ్ బట్ abstraction. And encapsulation అంటే everything is like binded into a everything. Like if I say in programming terminology, everything like whatever the fields or whatever the methods you write, everything is hidden inside the class. They are not hidden, they are kept inside the class, like they are bundled. సో రియల్ వరల్డ్లో మనం దీన్ని కంపేర్ చేయాలంటే ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ మెడికల్ క్యాప్సూల్ రైట్ హౌ ద కెమికల్స్ లైక్ టాబ్లెట్ మనం క్యాప్సూల్లో ఉంటుంది మనం క్యాప్సూల్ యూస్ చేస్తాం కదా లైక్ ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ యూ కెన్ సే ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ లైక్ fever or something was not, we'll use capsules, medicine capsules. So how everything is bundled inside that capsule, just like that all the things we write inside the class are bundled into a single class. That is nothing but encapsulation. And object ante it's a real world entity. So physical ga real world lo exist aye pratiti object, general meaning of object, right? Pen is an object, bottle is an object, charger is an object, laptop is an object. So and every object do has properties exist, like ప్రతి దానికి ప్రాపర్టీస్ ఉంటాయి. ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ పెన్ తీసుకుంటే ఇట్ హ్యాస్ సమ్ ప్రాపర్టీస్ అంటే ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ విచ్ కలర్ ఇట్ ఈస్ ఆర్ హౌ మచ్ లెంత్ ఇట్ ఈస్, రైట్? ఆర్ ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ మీరు ఒక పర్సన్ తీసుకున్నారు, పర్సన్ కూడా ఆబ్జెక్ట్. పర్సన్ తీసుకుంటే పర్సన్ ఏజ్ ఎంత, పర్సన్ నేమ్ ఏంటి, పర్సన్ జెండర్. ఆర్ స్టూడెంట్ తీసుకుంటే స్టూడెంట్ ఐడి, వాట్ ఈస్ స్టూడెంట్ ఐడి, ఆర్ వాట్ ఈస్ స్టూడెంట్ నేమ్, ఆర్ విచ్ క్లాస్ హీస్ ఆర్ షీ ఈస్ స్టడీయింగ్. సో ఎవ్రీథింగ్ హ్యాస్ ఇట్స్ ఓన్ ప్రాపర్టీ. సో అలా ఒక రియల్ వరల్డ్లో ఎగ్జిస్ట్ అయ్యి విచ్ హ్యాస్ ఇట్స్ ఓన్ ప్రాపర్టీస్ వీ కాల్ దట్ as అన్ ఆబ్జెక్ట్. అండ్ క్లాస్ అంటారా, క్లాస్ డజంట్ ఎగ్జిస్ట్ ఫిజికల్లీ. సో క్లాస్ అనేది రియల్ వరల్డ్లో ఎగ్జిస్ట్ అవ్వదు, ఇట్ ఈస్ జస్ట్ ఎ టెంప్లెట్. So how should I define it in real world? Let me give you an example in real world. You all know exams, right? Exams ante like example, if for example Krivi Softtech ఉంది, Krivi Softtech test conduct చేస్తున్నారు. So they'll release a pattern of exams. So exams conduct చేస్తున్నారు. Okay, just a second. So they'll release a pattern, right? Any subjects una sorry, each subject this pattern should be included. For example, there are two sections. First sections, like first section law, there should be like 15 MCQs and followed by 20 fill-ins. Okay, fill in the blanks. So let's say. సో ఇది ప్యాటర్న్, ఇది క్రివి సాఫ్టెక్ రిలీజ్ చేసిన ప్యాటర్న్. సో లెట్స్ సే మనకి ఎవ్రీ ఇన్స్టిట్యూట్ ఆర్ ఎవ్రీ ఆర్గనైజేషన్లో వీ హ్యావ్ డిఫరెంట్ సబ్జెక్ట్స్ ఆర్ డిఫరెంట్ క్లాసెస్, రైట్? సో లైక్ దే రిలీజ్ దిస్ ప్యాటర్న్ దట్ ఎవ్రీథింగ్ షుడ్, ఎవ్రీ క్వశ్చన్ పేపర్ షుడ్ హ్యావ్ దట్ 15 ఎంసీక్యూస్ ఉండాలి, 20 ఫిల్ ఇన్ బ్లాంక్స్ ఉండాలి అని వాళ్ళు రిలీజ్ చేశారు. లైక్ వాళ్ళు ఈ టెంప్లెట్లో ఉండాలని చెప్పారు. So let's say now we have different subjects, right? We have AWS, let's say, and full stack. Okay, these are the subjects. Let's say EV courses దాంట్లో. Okay, full stack and Azure. Okay, and let's say what else we have, DB, or let's say front end. So ఇవి 4 courses అనుకుందాం. Okay, ఈ 4 courses exam papers they should follow this pattern. So this pattern doesn't exist physically. ఇప్పుడు AWS exam question paper which has 15 MCQs and 20 fill in the blanks, also full stack 50 MCQs, 20 fill in the blanks, like that all the 4 of them will prepare the question paper in this pattern. So this is just a template. So similarly class is also a template. These are called as objects. వీటిని మనం ఆబ్జెక్ట్స్ అంటాం. ఓకే, exam is a class where these 4 are the objects which has their properties. So object ki properties ఉంటాయి, అవి మనం క్లాస్లో డిఫైన్ చేస్తాం. సో దీస్ ఆర్ ద ప్రాపర్టీస్. ఓకే, సో ఇప్పుడు what do you need to know about after this is a class doesn't exist physically. Class is just a template. So you will define properties like how what properties an object should have, that you will define inside the class. Even when you write a class in Java, that doesn't occupy any memory. Like if you write a class, like for example class is written using the keyword class. Okay, even if you write a class, even if you create a class, it doesn't occupy any memory. Okay, so these are the objects. So like I am hoping that you got some idea about the terminology. Okay, so let's see what do we have. So this is one more example which you can see, class and objects. So just now we discussed about exam class. So right now we will see what is person class. Okay, so person అనేది ఒక class. So these are the properties we defined inside the person class. Okay, so what properties we have, like every person ki unique ID, వాళ్ళ name, వాళ్ళ age, city, gender, and eat, sleep, play are methods. Okay, so these are all the properties defined in person class. This is a template. Now different person exists with same properties, right? ఇప్పుడు మీరు ఇక్కడ చూస్తే మనం ఒక క్లాస్ డిఫైన్ చేస్తే, ఓకే, ఒక క్లాస్ విత్ సర్టెన్ ప్రాపర్టీస్ డిఫైన్ చేస్తే we can create n number of objects, like numerous number of objects with same properties. అది నథింగ్ బట్ గ్రూపింగ్, రైట్? సో ఒక్కసారి మనం డిఫైన్ చేస్తే we can use it for different objects. Isn't it an advantage, right? How different objects can exist, like based with a single class. You can create multiple objects for a single class. Our values different ఉండొచ్చు, but properties, see, this person John has the same properties and Desi has the same properties, but the values might differ. So you can define properties at a single place. So whenever a person uses this class, then all the objects, like they are having the same properties, right? For example, ఇంకొక example if I have to say, let's say animal class ఉంది. Animal class కి let's say నేను properties define చేస్తా. For me, let me write it here. Just a second. I'll write a class called animal. So inside this, I'll define the properties called, for example, name, okay, and how it sounds, and how it eats. Okay, so these are the properties. So e animal class is just a template. Okay, now I can create multiple objects, like dog I can create cat, I can create cow, like that. Okay, all of them has the same properties, right? All comes under the group class called animal. So see how this is so efficient that it like groups all the things that are of same properties. See, నేను చెప్పినట్టు everything is very nearer to the real world, so you can relate it to the some everything that exists in the real world. Okay, this is about class and objects. So how do you write that class in a programming in Java? How do we write it? We use the keyword called class. See here, you can see how to create a class in Java. So class is a keyword. So what is a keyword? Keyword ante, it is a thing that exists predefined. Like whenever they are developing Java language, certain words which are already predefined. Predefined means they already has that functionality, or there has their own meaning defined already, which we will use. So class is already defined. It is a keyword. So it exists in Java language. So that we will use to create the class. So class keyword followed by class name. So whatever the name you can give. So as per the convention, it is advised to give the class name starting with a capital letter. Okay. So even if you give in small case, it still works, but as per the standards, as a good programming practice, you should give class name starting with a capital letter. Okay, so class keyword followed by class name, and you can see the brackets here, curly brackets starting and ending. So all the things you write inside the class, all the things, objects, data fields, methods, anything, that should be inside these two brackets only. Once you write that outside the bracket, ఏదైనా సరే ఆ బ్రాకెట్ తర్వాత మీరు ఏది రాసినా ఇట్ డజంట్ కమ్ అండర్ దట్ క్లాస్. ఆ క్లాస్కి అది బిలాంగ్ అవ్వదు, ఆ క్లాస్కి అది రిలేట్ అవ్వదు. సో ఎవ్రీథింగ్ వాట్ ఎవర్ యూ డిఫైన్, వాట్ ఎవర్ యూ రైట్ షుడ్ బి ఇన్సైడ్ దోస్ కర్లీ బ్రాకెట్స్. సో దట్ ఈస్ వై మనకి ఒక ప్రాపర్టీ మనం డిస్క్రైబ్ చేసాం, ఎన్క్యాప్సులేషన్, లైక్ ఎవ్రీథింగ్ ఈజ్ ఇన్సైడ్ ద క్యాప్సూల్, like everything is bundled into a single thing. That is called nothing but class. So this is how you will write the class. And మనం క్లాస్లో ఏం రాస్తాం, ఫీల్డ్స్ రాస్తాం, మెథడ్స్ రాస్తాం, విచ్ ఐ విల్ ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్ యూ నౌ. సో ఎవ్రీథింగ్ ఇన్సైడ్ ద క్లాస్, లైక్ what are the things that we include in class. Okay, so let me show you how the class. So for this, actually you can use, there are certain IDE, we call that as IDE for writing Java. You can use Eclipse, you can use IntelliJ. These are some tools which these are some, like you can, they are like free, you can use them for free. Of course, you can download it from the browser and you can use it. So if you are like willing to use IntelliJ, there is a community edition of it. Ultimate version, it like I think it requires some license, or it is a paid version, but you can use a community version which is free of cost. Okay, So these two are the IDs. Like there are so many other, but these two are preferable. And also in most of the corporate or environment or organization, they prefer using Eclipse or IntelliJ. Both of the interfaces, like whatever you see the user interface, both of them are same. Like IntelliJ is like an extended version of Eclipse. Both of them are almost same. Okay, right now I'll show you how to create class in an online compiler. Okay, so here we will select the language. Also, one more important thing you need to remember is whatever the class name you give generally, class name should be same as the file name. Why it should be same? Because when you execute your program, so how it is saved? Main.java, right? So when you run your program run చేసినప్పుడు JVM, Java Virtual Machine కదా మనకి responsible for interpretation, runtime. Who is responsible for runtime? Java Virtual Machine. So when you run your program, it has to find the class. ఏ క్లాస్ రన్ చేయాలి అనేది ఇట్ హ్యాస్ టు ఫైండ్. సో మీరు క్లాస్ నేమ్ main.java తో సేవ్ చేస్తే ఇట్ విల్ సర్చ్ ఫర్ దట్ పర్టికులర్ క్లాస్. మెయిన్ క్లాస్ ఎక్కడ ఉందని సర్చ్ చేస్తుంది. సో ఇఫ్ యూ గివ్ సమ్ అదర్ నేమ్ instead of main.java, it will throw you an error saying that class not found. So every time when you writing a class name should always be same as the file name. So if you write a class called student, then మీరు student.java అని సేవ్ చేయాలి. Or if you write a class called employee.java అని సేవ్ చేయాలి. Okay, so how do we write it? Class keyword followed by class name. Here it is already given main.java, so I am just giving the same name as main. So here if you see, everything should be inside the class. Okay, inside these brackets. Now, what are the contents inside the class? What do we write inside the class? ఇందాక మనం ఇక్కడ డిస్కస్ చేసాం దట్ every inside each and every class we will define the properties that an object can have. So what properties objects has? Object కి ఏం ప్రాపర్టీస్ ఉంటాయి, మనం ఏం ప్రాపర్టీస్ మనం క్లాస్లో డిఫైన్ చేస్తాం, బికాస్ క్లాస్ ఇస్ నథింగ్ బట్ ఎ టెంప్లెట్. See, if here I created a class, right? This doesn't occupy any memory. This is just a non-existing thing. This doesn't occupy any memory until you create an object for it. So as we said, it is just a blueprint. Now what properties we define inside there? So every object for a class have two properties. Actually three, but two we will define inside the class. So what do they are? Let's properties of object. So first one is uniqueness. Uniqueness means this is the like property we don't much say about it, that whenever you create an object you should give a unique name to it so that JVM will identify it uniquely. So for example, here I has two objects, right? John and Desi. Now they are uniquely identified, unique ID. If you see here, uniquely identified. Like I should like give a different ID for both of them while creating. Okay, even if you create multiple objects, each of them has its own unique ID. Okay, so by which they are identified. So every object has its uniqueness. Then, okay, then followed by state, followed by behavior. So these two terms, state and behavior, they are not the programming terminology. If you see state and in programming terms, if you see data fields, సో ఇందాక మనం ఇక్కడ చూసినట్టు వేరియబుల్స్ అన్నమాట. నేమ్, ఏజ్, సిటీ, జెండర్, నార్మల్ ప్రాపర్టీస్. ఓకే, దే ఆర్ ద డేటా మెంబర్స్ ఆర్ డేటా ఫీల్డ్స్ ఆర్ యూ కెన్ సే వేరియబుల్స్. వేరియబుల్స్ లైక్ నార్మల్ వేరియబుల్స్, properties of any object. Behavior ante methods or function also. You can also call them as functions in programming terminology. Functions ante, function is nothing but a block of code. In all, like maybe you might have heard in mathematics about functions, right? Like for example, మనం maths లో చూస్తాం f of x equal to 2x plus y or 2x plus 3, let's say. So this is nothing but a function, right? Here also the same. This is the same meaning even in Java or any other programming language. Okay, Okay, so here f is the function name and x is the parameter is taking. So how do we execute this function? See, మనం ఈ function ఎలా work అవుతుంది? Let's say you have to pass a number in place of x, right? So that is nothing but parameter. We call that as parameter. F అనేది function name, right? So even in programming also it is the same. Function అంటే it is the same. Some block of code which will do some which will have some functionality. For example, I write a function called add of 2 comma 3 or x comma y, I'll say, which is this. So this function will add x and y, so I have to pass two numbers and it will give me the sum of those two numbers. So like that, any function is nothing but block of code, okay, 2 to 3 lines of code which will give me some, for example, that can be addition, subtraction, not only just these things, any functionality. It has some its own functionality. You can use it independently, even not in this class, other class as well, you can use it. So these three are the properties of object. Now these two we will define inside the class. These two, data fields and functions. Here you can see when I say exams class exams అంటే వాళ్ళు ఎగ్జామ్ పేపర్ ద టెంప్లెట్ని రిలీజ్ చేసినప్పుడు దాంట్లో ఎంసీక్యూస్ ఫిల్ ఇన్ ద బ్లాంక్స్ ఉండాలి అన్నారు. సో దోస్ టూ ఆర్ నథింగ్ బట్ డేటా ఫీల్డ్స్, right? And when I say about animal class, name, sounds, they are nothing but data fields. Eats, how it eats. So if you see these brackets, this is nothing but indication of a function. Okay, so let me show you how the data fields exist inside the class. Now let's say this is the main class, right? So I'll write some data fields. You can comment using two slashes. Okay, so what is a comment? So comment is nothing but which will give you an additional information about particular code. సో మీరు కమెంట్ అని చేసినప్పుడు ఇలా కమెంట్లో పెట్టినప్పుడు జేవిఎం ఆర్ వెన్ ఎవర్ యూ రన్ యువర్ ప్రోగ్రామ్, దే విల్ బి ఇగ్నోర్డ్, దే వోంట్ గెట్ ఎగ్జిక్యూటెడ్. సో అవి జస్ట్ ఇప్పుడు ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ ఇఫ్ యూ హ్యావ్ 100 lines ఆఫ్ కోడ్, సో మరి ఒక్కొక్క ఫంక్షన్ దగ్గర ఆర్ ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ ఒక 2 to 3 lines కి యూ హ్యావ్ టు రైట్ అ కమెంట్, బికాస్ ఆ పర్టికులర్ లైన్ ఏం చేస్తుంది, ఆ పర్టికులర్ లైన్ వాట్ ఈస్ యూజ్ ఆఫ్ దట్ పర్టికులర్ లైన్ ఆర్ పర్టికులర్ లైన్ ఏం పారామీటర్స్ తీసుకున్నది, హౌ ఇట్ వర్క్స్. Because after some time when you visit the same program, you should not be get confused, right? You should not get confused about what it is doing. See, even if you give your program to someone else, after seeing this comments or documentation only, they can able to understand what it is going to do, what it is going to perform, right? So comments are very important whenever you are writing any class, or not only in this programming language, any programming language, comments are important. Okay, so let's define some data fields or variables. So int name, sorry, int id. Okay, so this is nothing but data type. We have different data types in Java. So int is one which stores the integers, and to store the text we have string, so name. Okay, and I want to store for example float, average. Okay, so these three are the data fields. So int is going to store an integer, string is going to store a text, float is going to store the floating values. You know, floating values means 3.2, 4.8, 5.7, like that. Okay, so now we will write some methods. So what, as I said, methods or functions are same and they like work same as the one in maths we learn, like f of x, g of x. We used to have functions in math, right? So they work same just like in programming also. So here the syntax is different. First we will have, let me write the syntax. Here I'll write the syntax, how a function look like. So method, first is the return type, space method name followed by brackets. Here if there are any parameters you will write them, then you will close. Here there are brackets inside this is the method body, like all the functionality of that method we will write this inside the method. Okay, so what is return type? Return type means what that function, what is the result of that function, what is that function returning. So for example, if I write a method called add and it is going to add two numbers or add all the subject marks. So for example, I will say int uh, get total marks. Okay, so this is going to take two subject marks, S1 and S2 and S3. Okay, so this will return S1 plus S2 plus S3. See, this is the return type. Return type is an integer, nothing but sum of marks of three subjects. These are the three subject marks we are passing. It is like just f of x comma y comma z in math. So the name of the function is get total marks here. So it is going to give us the sum of marks we pass here. For example, I'm passing the marks of three subjects and it is returning me the addition of all those three subject marks. Okay, this is one method. And for example, I'll add one more method. So here there can be any other data type. It can be string, it can be float, it can be char, it can be any data type based on the return type. Okay. For example, sometimes మనకి function ఏం return చేయదు. So it will just display or it doesn't have like even if you do calculation, it is not mandatory. Like ఇది ఈ data type return చేయాలి అని it's there is no such thing. So in such case where the function doesn't return anything, we will say it is void. Void means it is not going to return anything. So void, I have a function called display. So what does this do? This will simply display, let's say, marks or id. So it is going to display the id. Okay, so what am I doing here? I am printing the id and name. Okay, so okay, and in java every line should end with a semicolon. If you see here as well, every line should end with a semicolon, every statement. Okay, this is a function, so it doesn't have that. Inside the function, all the statements, like every statement you line, the single statement should end with a semicolon that represents the end of the line. Okay, so two methods I wrote. One is returning an integer value, another one is not returning anything, so we have to keep void, and it is printing. Printing means outputting something on the console. So here at whenever we run the program, the output will be displayed. That screen we call that as console. Here you can see interactive console. So wherever, not only in this IDE or editor, so where the we will write the code, we are writing the code in this black screen, right? So the part where you write the code, we call that as editor, and where you are able to see the output, you call that as console. So when you want to write something on the console, when you want to show something on the console, you use the statement called system.out.println. Okay, this line will print or write something on the console, whatever you provide inside. Here, what I'm giving ID and name, so which will be later printed on the console. Okay, so these two are the methods I defined. These two are the data fields. Now I define the properties. Now my next thing is creating the object. So where do I create the object? I have to create the object in a method called main method. So I'll explain you what is this main method. So what is this method? So here you can see the term called public. Public means it should be visible to everyone, mainly JVM. So when you run your program, even if you write like 1,000 lines, the first line that is going to be executed is this line, line 21. Okay. So if you make it public, only then JVM will be able to find it. Okay, so JVM's first thing is finding the class that should be same as the file name. Later, its responsibility is to find the main method. Main is the name of the method. Okay, and public is a access modifier. We call that, it is a separate topic which we will discuss later on. So public means, so for now, remember that public, if you make it public, only then JVM will be able to find, otherwise it will show error. Okay, so static means if you that any method, if you make it static, here also I can make it static int, no problem. So when you make any method static, it means it is given highest priority compared to any other method. Okay. Void, void, we just explained, I just explained here that void means it is not going to return anything. Same here also, main method is not going to return anything, and it is constant. This part is constant, you can't change anything inside this means the method signature, you can't change it. And what is the string args? So it is taking a string array to take some parameters while we are running. If I want to pass some data along while running the program, I want to pass some data, it is used to store that data. Okay, inside here I'll create the object. So how do we create the object? Using a keyword called new. See, um just a second, let me show you the object. See here, this line, main object equal to new main. So creating object of the main class. So new is the keyword, main is the class name, and this is constructor. Okay. So here main is a class name followed by object name. See, object name, as I said, it should be unique. Any object you can give, for example, I'll give object 1 equal to new is the keyword, and this is a constructor. What is a constructor again? Constructor is nothing but it is a kind of method, not a method. It is a kind of method which is used to initialize the instance variables. Initialize these variables. Initialize means to give them some value. Do they have any value right now? No, right? They are like empty. They are just defined and left. ID doesn't have any value, name doesn't have any value. So to give them some value, we use a constructor. Right now, I didn't write any constructor inside the class. Even I'm calling it. How? There is a default constructor inside every program. So there are two kinds of constructors. One is default one. Another one is parameterized one. That we will see later. For now, this is a constructor. To create the object, we use constructor. This is a class name followed by object name equal to new keyword and then constructor. Now I created the object. I can now assign all the properties I defined here to the object. How? Object one dot display. So if I say now it is going to print the ID and name. See, let I have run the program. See, ID equal to 0, name equal to null. Why? Because I didn't give any values inside it, so it is giving null. For example, if I give some value here, if I give int ID equal to 1231, name equal to let's say John, and average equal to, for example, I would say 34.4, or let's say 70, 89.9. So if I run this now, it is going to print the name and ID properly with some values. Okay, 1 second. Let me change it to double. Double and float are same. Okay, but double is larger than float. See, name, ID and John. Name and ID. You can see. So now object one, I